Welcome to Three Thoughts On. Today I have a special guest, my old friend Matt Simmons. Matt, how are you today?
Doing well, brother. It's been a while, so
It
glad we
has
could
been a while, yeah.
catch up last time in Orlando, but I can't even remember when that was.
Well, I can tell you it was sometime between April, May of last year and November. I know that for sure.
That narrows it down. There you go.
Yeah,
There you
yeah.
go.
So before we get started, this is actually going to be a little bit unique because I guess it will be fair to say that who you are and what your background is probably has little correlation to what you're doing today for a living, right? So why don't you just
Very
give
little
us
direct correlation, yes, for
yes,
sure.
yes, yes, maybe indirect correlation. So give us a little bit about who is Matt and what do you do and how did you arrive at doing what you do?
So I'm Matt Simmons, early retiree. I decided to leave the workforce in 2021. So been out of it for actually tomorrow the next day is the 4 year anniversary that I had my last day at work. So
Oh, that's
um,
great. And you were what, early 50s at that point? That's like a dream
yep,
come true for
yeah,
many.
50, almost 53. So
Yep. What did you do before you
since then
retire?
we
I don't know. Well, I was going to say, what did you do before you retired?
yeah. And how we met was through the wireless telecom industry. I was in that for 31 years, basically since I graduated from college. And the indirect correlation with what I'm doing now is that, both of us were in the international world and we got a real taste of um, different countries, different regions, different languages, different cultures, but just a taste because, we'd fly in, do our meetings, maybe get a week on the ground and then fly out. So I did have some, and you did too, have some longer term contracts where we were in a place for a month or so. But even that was, we'd go to the office and then we'd have our weekends and evenings and just, dipping our toes in other cultures. And I just decided I wanted to do more than dip my toe in. So
That is a great. That is a great. I tell you, I used to say back then, as difficult as it can be to travel in the corporate world, especially. I mean, I think you and I got lucky because I knew people who did. I used to average between 200 to 250,000 miles a year, but those are international, right? And I
yes,
know people that would do that domestically, and I cannot even
yes,
imagine that, right? So I think you and
right.
I were lucky that that we had the opportunity to go. Well, first of all, to be in a market at a time that was amazing.
The
Telecommunications was
time that we were there was, it'll never be again.
never
It'll
again.
happen in a different industry, but not in telecom.
Not in telecom, not in wireless. We saw the the launch of 1G when it wasn't called 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, all the way to 5G networks
Yep.
globally, right? And like you said, for me, I remember that was hard because I had a family at the time and my kids were little, but you're providing, right? You're just doing what
Yep.
you think you need to do. And sometimes you land somewhere and you say, I'm going to stay a day here just to kind of get to know the place a little bit more. But sometimes you have to turn right back around, right?
Oh yeah.
And it's a great opportunity. But I guess in your case, it gave you a taste for what you wanted to do long term. So walk us through that process. And at what point did you make that decision and tell us what you do now?
Sure. So I had spent the last few years of my wireless career in and around Denver, Colorado, with no travel. Yeah, it was a regular office job, and some days was able to telecommute, but still had to be in the office. And I really missed the travel, first of all. And then when we get our vacations, but that's only 2 weeks if you're lucky, you know. And then lockdown during COVID was a big reset button. Fortunately, telecom, as you know, was an essential industry, so we kept working. We didn't lose our jobs, and we were very lucky in that respect. Um, but there was still a lot more time on our hands. Everyone was working from home. No one was in the office. No one was commuting. So started watching a lot of YouTube videos and on travel, and just came to realize that one, I wasn't really getting fulfilled at work anymore. I was really in a rut. Um, Two, um, and it has happened. The second boy, my first boy, had been out on his own for a couple of years. He left the United States before lockdown, and then the second one, in the middle of COVID, started a master's program overseas. So he was gone too, and on a good track. So my wife and I started thinking, it's like, what are we working for? Before we were working for the kids to get them through school, to get their lives started, and that's already done. So what do we do? And so between our extra time and watching videos and just talking, we decided that we wanted to do full time travel. And being an engineer, being a spreadsheet jockey, I put all the numbers in, estimated costs based on all the research I could find, and the numbers worked. With what we had, with my wife, who's a little bit older, being able to access Social Security and her IRA, we had enough to live on to bridge until I can access my full retirement. And the thing that made it happen was two things. One, we sold everything. We have no house, we have no cars, we have no stuff. Most of what we have in this world, we carry with us in two suitcases and a few backpacks. We've got some storage back in the U.S. and a suitcase here and there with family and friends, but compared to what we had before, we got nothing. 99% of our stuff is gone. So with that and the ability to travel to inexpensive countries, we're actually spending less than half we're spending now about half of what we were in the US 4 years ago. And the way inflation's hit the US, we're spending much less than half of what it would be to live in the US. So you know, having enough assets, having enough income, and much lower cost of living is making it possible. And we've been at it for 4 years, and you know, assuming our health holds up and we continue to want to, we have no plans of stopping.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, and I remember talking to you about this when you first started and you started posting things, and I'm like, okay, what is Matt doing now? He's here. He's here. He's here. And then
That's the
little,
that was the first question. It's like, what are you doing?
I know, and it was after a few months. It's like, well, he's obviously not working, right? uh, which is great. I mean, I'm so happy for you. I tell everybody about what you're doing. At some point, I
Yeah,
think that uh,
thanks.
you can supplement your income by teaching people to do what you're doing. Because uh,
Yeah,
after uh, after you told me what this is about, which is what I want you kind of to go over here. It seems like it's a lot more doable than most people would realize. So,
absolutely.
when you talk about the numbers worked, zoom in a little bit there and say, okay, what are we talking about here from amount spent per year for the two of you to travel the entire year?
Yeah. So our initial goal budget, based on what turned out to be very optimistic YouTube people, was $2,500 a month.
Mm,
So that we blew right through that. We're not backpackers. We're not sleeping hostel
mhm.
and eat street food all the time. We definitely are older and used to some of our comforts that we can't give up. But even with that, our true budget, our first year was about $4,000 a month, so 48,000 a year. And in the ensuing years, our current budget is 5,000 a month. So
Five
it's gone
thousand
up.
a month.
Yeah, yep. And we're
So
so far we're on track to keep it.
to keep it.
So yeah.
So what does that look like? What do you get a couple of questions. So number one, Um, what do you get for the 5,000 a month? And two, when you talk about, yeah, totally get, the whole, hostel backpacking thing. I did. I don't think I mentioned this to you, or maybe I did mention this to you, but I did a portion of the Camino de Santiago from up in
Hmm.
Spain,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And that's something, when you do that, you are backpacking, right? So
Yes.
you pick hostels, but even in the hostel world, there's degrees of
Tiers. Yes.
tiers of hostels, right? So
Yes.
my buddy and I, uh David, we picked hostels that were more for like older people, right? Because
Hmm.
I guess we are at a certain age, and we going to go to sleep. We want to sleep as opposed to
Yeah, I don't want
being
to
up on
sleep
a.
on a second level bunk with 20 other people. I'm sorry.
Exactly. So let's talk about what do you get for that 5,000 a month, and what are some of the comforts you said you're not willing to give up. See, people get an idea of what exactly are you living with
Sure.
on that.
Yeah. So that covers, you know, all of our health insurance. We have an international health plan. That, by the way, what we're paying on it is less than I was paying when I was employed for better coverage. So
Incredible, huh?
yeah, yeah, it was mind-boggling when we started looking at it. That covers, our transportation, whether it's flights. We do cruises. We love cruises, point-to-point cruises, because it covers our transport, our lodging, and our food, and our tourism, our excursions.
Hmm.
Um, it covers groceries. Like in right now we're in Saranda, Albania. First time ever in Albania, and when we were growing up, Albania was Iron Curtain. So
Hmm.
just can't
Yep.
even believe that we're here. But we buy groceries. We have an apartment with a kitchen. Like for one thing, we have a one-bedroom apartment. So we will do a studio apartment from time to time, but we like that door. We like being able to have our own privacy, because you know no matter who it is, you don't want to be with them 24/7, 365. You need your space. So
Yeah. Yeah. No. No.
yeah.
No. That makes sense. But you don't always. So I'm assuming when you say apartment, you're doing Airbnb type,
Yep.
services, right?
Airbnb or Booking, yes. Or there's different sites that compete, but yeah, basically the
Right.
same idea.
But you sometimes stay in hotels.
Yes, definitely.
So what makes you make that decision over one versus the other for a particular location?
So one is if we have a late arrival, if we have a late flight, or we just can't, time it right, and it's a 8 o'clock check in, then we'll usually get a hotel, just because that's so much easier. We don't have to deal with trying to find an apartment and the key and all that. Um, Also, we love staying in nice hotels. Usually, we do it on points, but that's kind of a vacation for us, where no one has to cook, no one has to clean up. We get a really guaranteed comfortable bed. So, um,
And how often do you do that in a given
uh,
year?
maybe about a quarter of the time total.
Okay.
Like after Albania, we're going to Poland, and we do Hyatt a lot. So we have a lot of Hyatt points and some Hyatt loyalty. So there's a Krakow Hyatt we're going to stay in for about a week on points, and it's a Hyatt place, so we get breakfast. So
Yep. 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 No, that's cool. So how walk me through that process. How so the timeline of how you're planning on where to go next and then next after that. Like how far in advance are you planning your next
so
place?
that's evolved over the 4 years we've been doing it. And one thing I really want to mention is that we know a lot of people. First of all, there's way more people than we ever thought that are doing this. There are thousands and thousands, which in the world population is nothing, but a lot more than we ever thought. And through Facebook and face-to-face meetups and stuff, we've gotten to know a lot of them. And no one does this the same way. There's as many ways to do this as there are people. Everyone's got a different financial situation,
Hmm.
different passport, different family situation, different health situation, age. There's a way to do it that works for you somehow. So in terms of planning, we've learned what works for us. So we try to book summer and Christmas because that tends to be more popular and more expensive. So we try to book ahead, get better arrangements. And we've also started anchoring some of our travels with cruises. So we're taking a Baltic cruise out of Rotterdam in September. So we know we have to
Mm.
be in Rotterdam by that time. And then we took a transatlantic cruise from Florida after I had met up with you to Portugal last year.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
we anchored that on both ends. And then we're going back the other way from Rome to Tampa, Florida at the in late October this year. So
Hmm.
we'll have an anchor here and there. Like if we meet up with friends and family, that'll be an anchor. But other than that, we tend to plan about 3 months ahead.
3 months ahead. Okay. And then that way, that gives you plenty of time. Obviously, with hotels, it's a lot easier, but for Airbnbs, maybe they're,
Yeah,
or Airbnb kind of properties, maybe there needs
right.
a little bit more leeway, a little bit more planning instead of a little bit more leeway that you get with the
Yes.
hotels.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
And we divide and conquer. We have a division of labor. My wife does all the lodging, and I do the transport and some of the miscellaneous planning. So she'll find a place, and then every week she'll check again to see if there's a better place for lower or something like that. So
What about,
planning is her replacement job,
there you go. Well, no,
and,
hey, that
and
seems like you do.
YouTube videos and finances are my replacement job. So
It seems like you've got it all figured out, So let me ask you,
enough, at
who,
least.
what about food? How much? Because when you're in Airbnbs, you have kitchens and stuff, and the
Yeah.
hotels sometimes you do, most of the times you don't.
Yep.
What is the division there? The breakdown of eating in versus eating out, and packing a lunch versus just you know eating out all the time. Like I'm assuming you don't eat out all the time, but I also assume you're not eating in all the time. So what does that look like?
Right. Yeah. So, well, like I said, if we can get a hotel with breakfast, that's one less thing. If we don't have that, then usually we have a mini fridge, so we'll buy breakfast. One, we're too lazy to get up in the morning and go out to eat if we can help it. So that just makes it easier. Um, and then uh, groceries, probably 60%
Hmm.
overall for the year of the budget. So, um, but that changes that, and that's overall for the year. So we have, I gave it as a monthly number, but that's an average.
Right.
So when we were in Western Europe, we were over that number, but in Albania and Morocco and even southern Spain, we were under that number. So it averages out.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm assuming that, like you said, breakfast, you either get it for free or you have something that, you just picked up at a grocery store.
Yep.
Then you get up and you may have lunch out, or you pack it, with you. And then maybe
Yep.
dinner out, find a nice place to have dinner. Is that kind of how it works?
Actually, lunch has become our big meal. So
Okay.
dinner is early, unless it's Spain, where unless you can find a tapas place, you just can't eat early. But
Right.
it'll be a lighter meal. So yeah, lunch will be our heaviest meal. So and a lot of times we'll try to buy enough lunch if we eat at a restaurant to have leftovers for another meal. So
So
all
how do you,
depends if we have a fridge or a
correct.
microwave. Like in Albania, we don't have a microwave, so reheating stuff is limited.
Yeah, you know, I can imagine. So, how do you decide how long to stay at a given place? And obviously, you know, outside of the anchor points you mentioned earlier, where you know
Hmm.
you have to be somewhere,
Yep.
do you just kind of play it by ear, or do you know before you arrive somewhere that you're leaving after so many days?
Well, visa requirements dictate a
Mm,
lot of that. Most places are 30 to 90 days for U.S. citizens. Europe, the Schengen zone, which is a collection of 20 some countries.
mm,
You know, we'd love to just meander through all those countries, but we can only get 90 days out of every 180. So,
mm,
that's why we pick a continent. So, like this year, it's um, Europe and the Mediterranean. So we started it in Schengen in Portugal, Spain, France, Belgium, and then we went to Morocco and Egypt and Albania to reset our Schengen days.
mm,
Um, and then, although actually we're going to the UK next after Poland, which is not Schengen, but yeah, so we
mm,
have to manage visas. Also, some places just don't seem like we want to spend a month there. You know,
mm, mm,
like when we go to the UK, excuse me, we're going to be on a canal boat for a month, just cruising the canals, and then working our way up to Scotland and meeting my one of my cousins who is attending the 75th Edinburgh Tattoo Festival.
wow,
So yeah,
wow.
yeah. So that's something that he would do with his father on occasion, and he's my cousin's husband, and he's taking her for the first time. So we're hoping to things will work out, and our schedules will stay on track, and we'll meet up in Edinburgh, which is just cool. One time, a college buddy of mine, we met in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, and spent the month of April in Vietnam together. So,
Well, you better have reservations for lodging during the tattoo because
oh man,
that is crazy.
yeah, we booked that in December.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, that because it's also the Edinburgh
that's
Fringe Film
mhm,
Festival, so
mhm.
you got a double whammy. So yeah,
Yeah. I spent a lot
definitely.
of time out there. It's actually one of my top three European cities is Edinburgh. It is
Yes.
so, you know, sometimes
Yeah.
people are
Well, yeah, both
biased.
of us had work meetings there, luckily. So
Yeah,
that was one of the good things about our international work.
yeah, yeah. I know, and I actually ended up having an apartment there, company sponsored apartment. There was three of us, myself here, a colleague from Singapore, and another colleague from the West Coast, who for whatever reason were there very regularly, very
Hmm.
regularly. I was there at least 1 week a month, and we figured it out. It's like, why don't you just just rent us an apartment, a 3 bedroom apartment. So, and then the keys stay, and then it's available for anybody else if the three of us are not there, or if two of
Yeah.
us are there. So I did that, and I was right there on the Royal Mile, and it was
Nice.
just perfect.
Nice.
It was just
Nice.
great. But it is a beautiful city, so walkable. People complain about the weather, but whatever. I mean, it's just so nice. So yeah, I'm happy that you're meandering your way north uh, through that. Let me ask you. Uh, you started in in 2001, so that's 4 years ago. How many
Yeah.
countries have
2021. Yeah.
yeah, how many countries have you guys hit so far?
So the total number of countries that we have been to together is 60. Albania is our 60th. Now, 20 to 30 of those, I don't remember the exact number, were before we started traveling full time. But
Hmm.
so we've done, around 30 in 4 years.
30
So,
countries, and that's
and plus a lot of duplicates, 30 new countries and a lot of duplicates.
right, right. The is the goal to do all 190? Well, I think these days is 192, 93. Is that the goal?
No, no, no.
There's certain
We're
countries you
not
just don't want to go.
certain ones. Well, certain ones we will go to if it's not too far out of our way. But there are some that are, you just have to really want to go there. So